Good evening. Welcome to Tara's Tidbits PM edition. Today is Sunday, February 23rd. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. In this evening edition, we have been doing the book of Esther. We have read chapter 1 and 2 in the Bible and the introduction, part of the introduction of this book. Remember, I'm using this book along with this study. The book is linked down there if you decide that this book is something you might want to take a deeper dive into, because it is amazing. This book really changed the way that I think about myself and who I am in God's kingdom. So it is amazing. So tonight we are going to be reading from the book. So in the Bible, we have done chapter 1, which is where the king was flaunting all of his, riches and wanted his Queen Vashti to come and flaunt in front of everybody. And she said, I ain't doing it. And the other guys were like, well, you got to do something about this king, because if the other women hear about this, they're going to start talking to us like that. So he banished her. Then he sent his, guards, whoever you want to call them, to the city and said, go out and find a bunch of young women and bring them in. And so they did, and they brought them in. They went through 12 months of a process to make them worthy of the king. And then they, one by one, went in to see the king. And that meant then they lived in the second level of the harem, and they lived there forever. If the king never asked for them again, their entire life, they still lived there. They were never able to go back to their family. But when Esther went, Esther found favor with the king, and he liked her. So he had her put in the royal palace. So, and then Mordecai, her cousin, found out about a plot to kill the king and let her know. So they were both given they made the king happy. Let's put it that way. Okay, and that was chapter 1 and 2. So in the book, we read the introduction, part of it, and we'll read part of chapter 1. Chapter 1 is called Taken from Trauma to Triumph. The main verse in chapter 1 says, So it was, when the king's command and decree were heard, the many young women were gathered at Shushan, the citadel, under the custody of Haggai, that Esther was also taken to the king's palace into the care of Haggai, the custodian of the women. She says, I'm always intrigued by the passive tense in the phrase was taken in this verse. In fact, this verb can mean taken by force. The word taken indicates to be fetched or acquired like property. This edict went out across the land for the king's guards to gather young girls. One minute they were home with their families, the next minute they were whisked away to the palace, a place in a harem. Their lives were suddenly interrupted. The Persian Empire didn't care if the parents had other plans for their daughters. It didn't matter. It's so easy to dismiss Esther as a lucky young woman who won the heart of a king. Most people view the story of Esther as one of romance, but I would like to offer a different viewpoint. Esther was a woman with a tragic background. Both of her parents had died. She was adopted, cared for by her cousin, who advised her not to tell people she was Jewish. In fact, to call the process of collecting the women a competition is a little misleading, because none of the contestants would go home afterwards. These women were slaves whose lives were not considered their own. I looked at the story of Esther differently after reading this book. It says, imagine one day if you were going about your day and suddenly a government official comes and for all intents and purposes just snatches you off the streets and you never get to go back to your family again. That's what she was. But God can take all things and turn them for good, which obviously he did. These occurrences in Esther's life were unfair, and she was indeed a victim, but her story offers hope to all women who have faced traumatic, life-altering situations and trouble of any kind, that God can work through fears and dangers to accomplish your destiny. Did you hear that? Esther had a tragic backstory. I told you her parents were killed. She had to go live with her cousin. They had been... the Jews had been banished. What's another word for banished? You know what I mean? To another country. She had a lot of trauma in her life. And a lot of us have trauma in our lives. But again, I'm going to read that paragraph again. These occurrences in Esther's life were unfair. She was indeed a victim. But her story offers hope to all women who have faced traumatic, life-altering situations and trouble of any kind, that God can work through fears and dangers to accomplish your destiny. Have you ever felt like your destiny has been taken? God can work through your fears to accomplish that destiny. God is not limited. I'm just reading bits and pieces of things that I had highlighted when we did this book. God is not limited by the same things that may limit us in our natural everyday world. He operates beyond all limitations. Past failures, lack of resources, poor upbringing. God takes whatever we have and applies his love and favor to it and lets it soar, causing you to excel in the most unlikely situations. Is that not amazing? All right, at the end of every chapter, there are some declarations, and there are too many for me to read all of them today, but I'm going to read a few of them, and I would like for you to say them with me or repeat them after me. I declare that my light has come. No longer will I sit in darkness, for the Lord is releasing heavenly revelation and illumination to me. My purpose is getting clearer. I am a woman who has mental, emotional, and spiritual fortitude. New strength is rising within me. I choose to move forward in the face of trauma. I will sustain a sense of personal meaning in my life. I will not be destroyed by the events that happen to me. I receive inner strength to overcome. I declare that I will not let difficult or traumatic events define or derail my destiny. I will not allow a spirit of bitterness, hurt, and unforgiveness rule my life. I refuse to have a victim's mentality. I am strong and able to withstand opposition. I will continue blessing and serving the Lord and others, even in the midst of storms and cries. And the last one, I am conspicuous, distinguished, outstanding, and permanent. I will shine bright like the diamond for the King of Glory. Amen. This book is amazing. And that's just bits and pieces of chapter 1. This book is amazing. Again, I'm going to link it down there. If you want to go grab it and do a more in-depth reading of it, because it really is awesome. But thank you for joining me. I'm loving the book of Esther. Again, it's so good. So thank you. I do a morning Bible study. I do this. I do some praise and worship throughout the day. But at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I go live on the TikTok channel, and I would love to have you join me for a live praise and worship and Bible study there in the evening. So in the meantime, have a great evening.